Welcome to the Powercat Podcast, the original K-State sports show. Now let's go to the rolling Flint Hills, home of the Cats and Dogs studio. Here's your host, Tim Fitzgerald.
Hey everyone, it's Fitz with Gills and Coles. We rearranged the furniture here. I'm in the middle. I can now poke at them. And that's Daphne snoozing it away because she's not excited to be in here. But I am, and so is the Fridge Wholesale Liquor. Make sure you go to the Fridge anytime you're in town. It's going to be football season before you know it, which means it's also Fridge season. For all your tailgating needs, go to the Fridge at the corner of this and that, the town in which we live. That's that, Reed. That's it. So there was a theme to the questions, Ryan Gilbert?
For the first half, yes. Somebody committed to K-State on Monday. You guys might have to refresh me a little bit on who that might be, but kind of a big deal, I guess.
Nothing's popping in my head. I'll check KU Twitter. I think they're probably talking about it.
Or Oregon too. I heard there was
we didn't really want him.
Okay,
whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, whatever. That was quite a day. Honestly, I've never seen coverage like that from us / 24/7 Sports combined. At one point, I think we had 10 Linkon Cure items on our front page of different types, standard stories, VIP stories, videos, an exclusive podcast between Fitz and Coles. Oh my God, the female demographic went through the roof on that one. Just pulling in the ladies. Leaving Gills out really helps. But it was a cool day. We brought Zach out of retirement, made him go freelance for us. We got more coming from our adventure in Goodland, a lot more, and you'll see that later on as hopefully it comes together pretty quick. I should probably touch base with our Ryan Wallace, who was leading the charge in Goodland, but that was a cool event. My favorite part of the event was when Linkon turned the camera and said, "It's packed here," and the people in Nashville were like, "How small is this town?" I mean, it was packed. It was like there was like 100 people.
Yeah. The 3 rows of bleachers were all full.
So funny. It's like, that's so Goodland. That was just so Goodland. But what a cool day for K-State. Cool day for Linkon Cure. And that's going to be basically the theme of the first half. And for your reading pleasure here's Ryan Gilbert, the 7th sexiest man in Aggieville.
I'm going to ignore that. From Denland 0809, what are realistic stat predictions for Linkon Cure's freshman year as far as catches, yards, and touchdowns?
First of all, check your mic. Make sure it's going through your mic. I don't know. What are the realistic expectations, Cole? What do you think?
I guess it kind of depends on Garrett Oakley. That would be my answer.
Yeah.
If Garrett Oakley, well, let's remember this too, Fitz. Garrett Oakley is a redshirt sophomore. And so if Garrett Oakley has a big season this year, there's nothing that says he can't test the NFL draft waters. And so I don't think that's going to happen. I think Garrett Oakley will probably be here for 2 more seasons. So assuming that Garrett Oakley is around, I mean, it's just so hard to predict because we really don't know how Matt Wells and Connor Raleigh want to use this tight end, their tight ends yet. I could tell you that if it was a Colin Klein-led offense, it would probably be a decent amount of touches. But it's just so hard to say because we haven't seen how Avery Johnson wants to use his tight ends, right? There's so many dynamics that are in play here. Really, the only answer I can give to this question is that I think Linkon Cure will play. So, I mean, take that for what it's worth. I don't think he'll redshirt. I do think he'll play. So just by saying that, they would have to try and use him in the game. So, I would say probably whatever your second tight end normally gets, whatever that looks like this year, you would probably be looking at for Linkon Cure next year.
Keep in mind that he's not coming till June. He's dedicated to finishing out his high school sports season, which, you know what, I actually like. I mean, go be a kid for the final 6 months. That last semester at high school is the best semester of high school by far. You're about done. You're cruising. The weather gets nice. You get senior fever. You got prom. Well, some of us had prom. I don't know that Gilbert did. All those things I think are important to, the entire high school experience. And I'm glad he's doing it. Now, other kids do need to get there early. But he feels like, we had this in our exclusive interview with Ryan Wallace and Linkon Cure, that he's spoken to Connor Riley about it. And he said, it's up to you, man. Are you going to take care of business and be ready to play? That's the perfect answer. I think he will play as a true freshman. I think they'll find time. But while we're focusing on the guys that will be on the field this year, for the most part, and Linkon Cure coming in next year for the 25 season, there's dudes in between there that can play. So there's going to be more tight ends coming up. We're going to see, I don't know who the third tight end will be this year, but there will be one, because I think this offense will continue to use the tight end. And then we'll find out where that leads. Are they really going to need Linkon Cure as a true freshman? Is he going to be like Avery, where you just got to find a role for him and play him, because you're probably not going to have him 4 years? Honestly, I think the coaches will know pretty soon after he arrives that this kid's ready to play or not. I mean, again, it'll be up to him. Will he come in football shape, not track shape, football shape, and be ready to go and know the playbook and can hit the ground running? And if he's not, well, he probably made the decision himself.
I think too, guys, like, at the tight end position, it's fairly non-complex, like as non-complex as it could possibly be, right? At the offensive line position, you just don't see a true freshman come in and play. At the defensive line position, you rarely see true freshmen come in and play because of the physicality nature. I would even say at the quarterback position, for obvious reasons, you typically don't see guys come in and play right away. But at the skill positions, cornerback, I probably wouldn't even throw safety in there, but cornerback, receiver, and you can throw, Linkon Cure's this version of the tight end that he would play his freshman year. He wouldn't be a hand in the ground, traditional tight end, I wouldn't think. But if you line him up in the slot, if you line him up on the edge, that's the kind of role that I could see him having his true freshman season, because you're right. Like, it's, hey, these are the concepts you have to understand. And we've already heard Connor Riley talk about how they're going to simplify the offense for the receivers. Well, if they simplify it for the tight ends too, there can be a role for a guy like Linkon Cure as a true freshman, just like there can be a role for, some of these other young players who maybe didn't fully grasp the offense last season. We're going to see some of these other guys like Will Ancio. Like, it wouldn't surprise me to see them, get a little bit more playing time because of, A, they're simplifying it, and B, at the tight end and wide receiver position, it is a lot easier to come in and contribute if you have the speed and if you have a good grasp of the offense.
Yeah, I think they'll, because of that, kind of the blocking element, they'll probably, pick their fights with them. But if he can come in ready to be that tight end that can block at the line of scrimmage, yeah, he's going to play a lot. But that's a big if, and that's going to be the biggest shift for him coming to this level, is getting off the ball against bigger, faster defenders, and also being able to block bigger defensive linemen if that's your assignment, or linebacker as the tight end, because honestly, he's just not seeing that. You wouldn't see that. He's out manning everyone, and that's always the concern of that transition from smaller high school football up to the Big 12, is how quickly can they acclimate to the speed and size of the other dudes.
Special players are going to find their way onto the field, right? You go back to last year, Avery Johnson, you've got to get that guy on the field. And he was more of a runner than anything for a good chunk of the season. But if he's your run specialist, all right, that's what you are. You go up to Dylan Edwards this year. We're a little maybe uncertain of what his exact role might be, but you've got DJ Giddens there in the backfield. So we're anticipating obviously him to run it, but also go out and catch some passes. Special players, special talents, this coaching staff, any coaching staff, you're going to have to find minutes for them. And with the 5-star, status, it kind of speaks for itself. So he'll be on the field as a freshman one way or another.
Yeah, I agree. He's just going to be too athletic to not put on the field. And he's made it clear. I mean, he said at his press conference for the next 2 or 3 years. I think that's optimistic. It's you're going to be there at least 3 years, and go from there. You might as well play all 3 years. I don't think the plan as we sit here now is for him to play 4 years of college football, let alone a red shirt in 4 years. But plans change, injuries occur, and we'll see what happens.
From Donnie Cat 97. Would we have landed Avery and Linkon if they weren't Kansas kids? And how can we sell ourselves to non-Kansas kids who are high-star recruits?
No, Not at this point, but now that you're amping up the recruiting profile, you can start getting into those homes. But it's not easy unless the kid is from North Dakota or something, or South Dakota or Montana or Idaho. There's always going to be a Division 1A/FBS program to try to keep the kid at home, and particularly if you're going into an area where there's a Power 4 program. So someone's always going to have the home field advantage on most recruiting opportunities. It's not easy to get there, but I think if you make the right connections with the right players, you can do it. And this is just helping show that good players want to come to K-State. And sure, for now, it takes them being a Kansas kid, but locking down some of these Kansas kids that are high profile is huge for the program. It's a huge step. And they just, they're not flipping a switch magically and doing things differently. They are slowly amping up the pressure. They're Bill Snydering the hell out of this thing. They're getting a little bit better. He once told me that the key to recruiting isn't to go find the superstar. If you've already had a pretty good team, you got to find the guy that's a little bit better than the other guy you recruited the year before and a little bit better. And they seem to be doing that. And we noticed it last year with the defensive recruits that a lot of them redshirted, how good they were. I think they're finally bringing in effective classes that you can get some early benefits from while having the developmental portion of the process for those players.
Gills, who asked this question?
This question was from, give me uno momento, was from Donnie Cat 97.
Okay, so Donnie Cat 97. I have a kind of a complex answer for you. And I'm going to answer yes and no, because the original question was K-State, if these kids weren't from Kansas, would they have a shot? And I kind of go back to last year, and I use this as an example. Grant Bricks, I don't know if you guys remember that name, from Iowa. Grant Bricks, his final three was, Alabama, K-State, and Nebraska. And K-State was in it right until the very end, and he ultimately chose Nebraska. Well, I would probably compare him more towards the Avery Johnsons. If Linkon Cure was from Nebraska, would K-State have had a chance to land him? The answer to that question is yes.
Yeah.
If Linkon Cure was from Iowa, would K-State have had a chance to land him? The answer to that question is yes. If he was from Oklahoma, Texas, Louisiana, they're not going after him, right? That's not where they have their connections.
Keep your powder dry. Yep.
Right. But if there is a 4-star kid that they feel like they have a realistic chance to go get, then they are going to recruit him. And so, no, if Linkon Cure was from Texas or Florida, K-State wouldn't have a chance to land him because they wouldn't go get him. There's a reason why this is the first 5-star commit in the history of the program. It's because 5-star commits do not grow on trees in Goodland, Kansas. If they did, something would be in the water and the FDA would have to go, test it. But ultimately, if there are kids that are 4- and 5-star recruits in the Midwest, in the upper Midwest, where Kansas State has extremely strong connections, yes, they can and they will start to win these battles more often than they have in the past. Last year with Grant Bricks, I think that was last summer. It was last summer. With that battle, 3 years ago, K-State's not even in that conversation. But now they're in the conversation and they're starting to kick that door down. And so it's not going to happen overnight. Guys, it probably won't happen in this class. I know people want to talk about, Linkon Cure just committed to K-State. It's going to bring a lot more 4-star recruits. That's probably not going to happen. But the more talent you continue to acquire and the bigger your brand goes, when there are kids who are from the upper Midwest and they have a list that includes some SEC schools, but there's K-State, are they going to want that Midwestern appeal? Because that's what they're used to. And I think the answer to that question is yes, because K-State can use that to its advantage. They have in the past. They did with Linkon Cure. They did with Avery Johnson. If you can get kids who have very similar backgrounds that have a high star ranking, then you're going to start to see them pulling these kids more regularly.
Okay, so we've often argued that stars don't matter, and they really don't. It's about the player you get. Did you see the list of the 10 highest rated recruits in K-State football history? More than half of them are trash. Those stars didn't mean a damn thing. And honestly, back in the day, if you want to say it that way, K-State got 4- and 4-star guys because they were flawed. They might be great players, but there was another flaw that turned off other programs, and K-State took a flyer on them, and A lot of them washed out, including Chris Bogus, who was simply not physical enough to play. He's a perfect example of a guy that kicked ass in high school, but when he got to bigger opponents, he couldn't handle it. So there was flaws in those guys. Now we're seeing them get the Avery Johnsons and some of these guys that are coming in and hitting the ground running. And I think Linkon Cure will be the same way. And there's an element too of getting the guys from Kansas. You have more availability to see them. They're probably coming to your camps, and also they are invested in the school. They grew up with fans. Their parents might be graduates or fans. They're just invested in the product more. And I think that's been a kind of a secret ingredient to K-State's success, is always bringing in Kansas kids, whether it's a walk-on or a scholarship guy. They find more value in playing for the purple.
From Snarecat 3, I think it's reasonable to say the addition of an elite quarterback in Avery Johnson has had a positive impact on K-State recruiting, both from high school and transfer portal. Should we expect the addition of an elite tight end to help or hurt recruiting offensive positions, as we already have our star?
It's not just having an elite quarterback, it's having Avery.
Yeah.
He is Mr. Personality. He is not shy about picking up the phone and FaceTiming a recruit and selling. Dylan Edwards isn't either. You can have the coach's call, you can have the recruiting guy's call, but when the starting quarterback calls, and you're particularly an offensive guy, like, okay, this is pretty awesome. They're really effective recruiters. And I think Linkon Cure will be that way too. If they can get that rolling with that internal recruiting, along with the changes that they've made with their recruiting process, this could get pretty fun. It really could. If K-State goes out and wins the Big 12, or at least gets to Arlington this year, I mean, they're going to be in the playoff in all likelihood, and the visibility of the program will continue to rise. And that's the biggest change coming for the Big 12, is they're going to have more access to being on the big stage, because the big stage is bigger now and it's more inclusive, and you got an opportunity to get in there and do something with it.
So I'm going to answer this question, and I think talking about Avery Johnson is a perfect way to talk about it, because he is one heck of a recruiter, guys, but he's one heck of a recruiter because of his personality. There are a lot of recruits who really don't know who he is. Like, we know who he is because we are around him regularly. We cover this team. We cover this conference. A lot of K-State fans know who Avery Johnson is because he's from Kansas. But there's a lot of recruits that don't know who he is because he only played a handful of games. But when those FaceTime calls continue over the fall, if K-State has the success we think they're going to have, and those FaceTime calls continue to recruits in the summer of next year, 365 days from now, when Linkon Cure is able to pick up the phone after he is a top 15 player in the nation and call these other recruits, that is where you see it start to pay off down the road. Like, yes, Linkon Cure's commitment is a huge deal because he's a great football player, but it's also a huge deal because he is going to have status. He is going to be well known amongst kids. And the example I talked about, I did radio out of Western Kansas today with our friend Colby Van Camp, and I brought up Ian Primer. And if you don't know who Ian Primer is, he is the number 1 player in the class of 2026. He is also a tight end. He's the number 63 ranked player in the country. He's on that exact same trajectory that Linkon Cure is on. If you don't think that when Linkon Cure FaceTimes Ian Primer, because inevitably that's going to happen, that's going to mean something to him, then you're crazy, because it will mean everything. These kids know each other. They're connected to each other. And Avery Johnson is the one, Dylan Edwards, and throwing Linkon Cure, they are going to be better recruiters than any coach could ever be. Because if a player feels welcomed on the team by the players, that's that quote-unquote feeling that all the players always look for. It really is.
I guess I would say the only way that it could hurt, and I agree with you guys, it's not going to hurt, but the one thing that maybe is worth mentioning is there's only so many pieces of that pie to go around, right? Especially if you are a tight end. Do you want to be sitting behind a guy like Linkon Cure? Probably not. But again, we talked about it. If you think you're a great player, or you are a great player, like, you're going to find minutes one way, you're going to find snaps rather one way or another. So I'm not too concerned with this hurting recruiting, but I guess, I mean, it is worth mentioning that when you get a guy like that, I guess that might, turn some recruits away with the star being there.
Well, if K-State maintains the offense as we've seen it, they can make a really solid argument that we play 2 tight ends a lot.
Yeah,
and that's different than quarterback. You can't make that argument, although they tried it last year. Didn't work.
Year before, to an extent, too?
Yeah, it just doesn't work. Don't do that.
Fitz, where did you go to high school?
Salina Central.
Did you know that the number 3 player in the state in 2026 is from your alma mater? Another four-star recruit, offensive tackle, Caden Snyder.
Huh. I have to look him up.
Yep. See if you
compare our tattoos.
Ask around and see if he's been to what's the burger stand that was in Salina that was in Aggieville for a little bit?
That's Cozy Inn. Yeah.
Yeah, Cozy Inn. Yep.
Yeah.
Ask around.
That's a good way to pack on weight there, young Snyder. Just go to Cozy Inn, get a 24-pack, go home, and your family will hate you, but you'll be so damn happy. You'll fart a lot. But anyhow, that's a whole different topic. Go ahead.
First-hand experience from Fitz.
Oh my gosh. So I really hadn't had many Cozy Inns since I was younger, and the stomach hadn't been treated poorly by alcohol. And then I had some in Aggieville, and they were good. And I was not good. I was not. They're aggressive with their onions.
From last question of the first half is from Wildcat Pilot 88. Recruiting has taken leaps forward under Kleiman with 5 years or so of true freshmen arriving on campus ready for Big 12 competition in the way they look and perform. Is the label of developmental program still fair?
Yeah, it absolutely is. But you can mix that in too. You can mix it in with guys that can come in and play. But for the most part, your recruiting classes are going to redshirt and get better. There's only so many guys that come out of the high school ranks and play at the Power 4 level. So to get some of those guys is significant. But let's be honest, most of those guys are congregated at Georgia and Alabama and Ohio State and the brands, that have the money and have the exposure and have led a lot of people to the NFL. So yeah, they're still going to have to find the Ben Sinnott. I mean, 3 years ago, none of us really knew Ben Sinnott, and then he starts playing, and we're like, "Holy cow, this kid's good!" And then he just turns into an obvious NFL tight end, and he's gone, a former walk-on. So yeah, you're still going to be developing people like crazy.
You have to develop them. I mean, you have to, because if you're not developing, then that's a lot worse. The not being a developmental program, the alternative is you're not developing. And if you're not developing, then you are turning into, here I go again, I'm going to say it, you're turning into Colorado, where you're constantly flipping over your roster and having to go through the transfer portal, and you don't have any kind of continuity on your roster. And so if you're not developing players, you're probably losing, and you're probably not keeping a job. So yes, K-State has to develop players because they don't have $75 million in NIL money to go out and attract 5-star kids. But nobody has $75 million in NIL money. So most teams have to be developmental programs. Like, that's the thing about football that's different than basketball. You can't just go out and recruit one and dones, because it's literally against the rules to be one and done in the NFL. And so every good team is a developmental football program. If you're starting a true freshman at quarterback, you're probably not going to win very many games. That's just the reality of the situation.
But, at schools like Alabama, they have the luxury of having guys that can walk in and play immediately. They don't have to use the portal as much because they're bringing in freshmen that look like 23-year-old men. But they still have to develop guys. But I've always said that the failure of the great programs that get high-level recruits, like Texas did for so many years, was they weren't developing them.
Yeah.
They came in and they said, "Oh, you're good now. Let's go." And you got to just keep getting better. I mean, that's obvious, but those programs would almost say, "Well, we got you. You're so talented. You're going to just keep getting better." And then the coaches don't really put in the work to get them better. And that's the downfall of many a program. It's lazy. When you're out of Kansas State, there's no steps to skip. You got to take all the steps to turn into a good football program.
That's why Alabama was so good, right? Under Saban, is because
He
they
didn't skip
developed.
the steps either. Yeah.
No, they developed. And you go back and look, and he started true freshman, but he started true freshman because they were ready to play. He
Right.
started true freshman because he recruited them to be immediate contributors. And very rarely did they have true freshmen on the field that weren't future first-round picks, right? Very rarely was a true freshman out there where you're like, ooh, we are going after that guy. The true freshman that was out there was probably better than the senior who was his backup or the senior who he was playing next to, which I think K-State can get to that level, right, where they are bringing in guys who are better. Who are better than the incoming seniors. I think we're kind of to that point. You could make an argument that right now you look at that linebacker position. If Asa Newsom stayed healthy, I don't know if they go out and get another linebacker in the transfer portal. I think they had to go get Alec Marinko from New Mexico State because of the injury situation. But there's nothing that says that Asa Newsom can't push him or push some of these other linebackers or, not even just Asa Newsom. Look at the defensive line. How come Chidi Obiazar can't push Brendan Mott or Cody Stufflebean? And so, we look at some of these young guys. It is their job to take the older guys' jobs. And if they do that, you know that your program's in a healthy spot compared to where it was just a few years ago.
Wait a minute. Is that how this company works? Are you trying to take the older guy's job?
That's Gilbert. That's Gilbert.
Okay. Is that it for the first half? That was
it.
That
Yes,
did
sir.
you say that? And I missed it.
Did
What?
I swear I said it.
You went like this. You went like this. You nodded your head on the podcast.
You nodded, loser. He's
Unbelievable.
nodding. For our listeners, he's nodding. That sounded weird. We'll be right back with more of the Powercat Podcast, sponsored by Fridge Wholesale Liquor.
We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
Please visit the Fridge Wholesale Liquor, located at the corner of Claflin and Westport Road in Manhattan, Kansas.
Welcome back to the show. Let's return to the Cats and Dogs studio.
Welcome back to the Powercat Podcast. Fitz and Gills and Coles and the two dogs doing their thing. It's a hard life around here. We're sponsored by Fridge Wholesale Liquor. It looks like Dude and Daphne spent their day having products from the fridge. Nope, they're not passed out drunk. They're just dogs and they sleep a lot. That was a weird read. I'm sorry, Fridge. Keep sponsoring us. No, seriously, stop in the fridge. They're wonderful people. I say hi to the mini Mikes, and if you see the one and only Kevin, shake his hand. He's the owner. On with your questions from Wabash Station. Ryan Gilbert.
From Denland 0809. Who are the better recruiters, Kleiman & Co. or Tang & Co.?
Ooh.
You know what? I'm not going to do that because they are such radically different things right now. I mean, you could go back when basketball was about bringing in freshmen and make a better comparison. I mean, if you want to just talk recruiters, it's football because they're the ones bringing in the freshmen and having to sell them. But yeah, I know you're recruiting out of the transfer portal, but you also have, thank you, Daphne. You also have a more complete product from which to judge and analyze whether that player is ready to play at the Big 12 level. They're both really good at how they need to go about it. We had a big dog shift in the studio. How they go about it. If you're using the portal in basketball, these guys have been really good, except the middle year where they just kind of whiffed on some guys and didn't find adequate substitutes for them. But football is doing a great job in the high school ranks. They're just two different games right now. It's literally apples and oranges. It's hard to compare them.
Yeah, you said it best, Fitz. I mean, I didn't have a good answer here. I was hoping you guys would take a strong stance on one side or another, but no, they're both staffs are doing good and in their own separate ways, right?
Yeah.
So if we were to go through and look at official visits for K-State football from this year, and then look at visits for basketball from the transfer portal cycle, I would think the percentage would be almost identical. It's just thinking off the top of my head, it felt like with K-State football, they're probably going to get 2 out of every 5 guys that was on an official visit. If 5 guys visit on an official visit for a weekend, they're probably going to get 2 or 3 of them. I'd have to go back in and double check, just thinking math off the top of my head from what it's been like. But Gilbert, it kind of feels like the exact same thing for basketball too, right? Like one guy would visit, maybe two or three guys would visit, and K-State would find a way to get one or two of them. And I think so. If you're just looking at it from like a statistical standpoint of like, here is who the staff wants to get, here is who the staff gets, I would think that it's probably equal. Like maybe not extremely equal. And there's a lot of variables as far as like talent goes, right? Like if you go after the higher, the better, the more quote unquote more talented guys, then it's probably going to be harder for you to obtain them. But as far as identifying who you want for your program and securing those commitments, I really think it's a lot closer of a number than probably people think.
So Cole's answer is this apple and this orange are equally delicious.
Yes.
I like them both.
Well, here's another, I guess it's not a fruit, an egg. What are eggs?
Eggs are
kind of
fruit.
their own
Yeah,
thing,
they're fruit. Yeah. Go with that.
When you put your eggs in the nature and that college basketball world, right? You kind of have to put a lot of your eggs in just a few baskets. And if you hit on those guys, then awesome, great. If you miss, it's much more prominent. It kind of gets not exposed, but fans may panic a little bit more if you miss out on a hoops prospect rather than football. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's just kind of how it is when you only have 12 roster spots, 13 roster spots to go around on a hoops team. It's kind of magnified a little bit more. So obviously K-State's missed out on some guys in hoops. They've got some big guys to come in and commit in hoops as well. And so it gets magnified. I keep saying that word, magnified, but on football, it's a lot easier to miss on a guy or two and rebound and recover. But you go back to the last offseason, the last portal cycle for hoops, missed out on some guys, and it obviously was, I mean, there were some issues on last year's roster, but to get some different guys from the portal, I think K-State would have been more likely to be an NCAA tournament team. Obviously, K-State football missing out on some guys as well. And don't get me wrong, you're seeing them put those eggs in the Linkon Cure baskets and the Avery Johnson baskets, but by and large, it's a lot easier to recover in football if you miss a guy compared to basketball.
And Gilbert, how many roster spots did basketball fill through the portal? Do you know off the top of your head?
They filled up 9.
9.
Excuse me, 8.
8.
So 3 returners and David Castillo.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
Hold on.
So
that'd be 9. Yeah.
It would be 9?
Yeah, it would be 9.
Yeah.
I'm a journalism major, man. What are you asking me these questions for?
Okay, you're good at math. So thank you, Fitz. He's counting for those of you who are listening to the podcast. So they filled 9 spots. Again, I don't know exactly the number of guys who visited. I mean, thinking off the top of my head, they probably 20 guys? Like 20 guys that they were connected to and visited. Maybe you would say 9 of them committed, which would mean they would miss out on about 11. So if you're doing percentages, that's just under 50%. So when you're looking at it from that perspective, you're like, oh, well, they only got, 40 whatever percent of the guys that they wanted. But then when you go compare that to football, I think if K-State gets 1 out of every 2 players that they target, that's pretty dang good. And so, again, it's all relative. And that's why this question's interesting, because if you were to just look at it from a percentage standpoint, like I was talking about earlier, you'd probably find that basketball has a higher percentage of quote unquote landing the guys that they want. Now, I don't know if that doesn't necessarily mean that they're better or they're worse, but for a lot, I know that they took a lot of slack. The coaching staff took a lot of slack. And for as much as we celebrate football, like you have to give basketball props because they have done a good job about identifying the guys they want and closing on them.
Okay. Next.
From Itane Bibi, Kleiman is amazing in keeping most of his assistants, and Tang's team seems to be a very tight family. Who will survive longer without losing any of its current assistant coaches who were hired on day one and have been with the team?
I think football's in that position because we know Uric is looking. I mean, This wasn't a good year to move up after that performance, but if they have another Sweet 16 plus year and finish well in the Big 12, I think he's going to have a great argument to be a head coach, maybe at a Conference USA or Mountain West type program, but I think he's going to be in the mix for a really pretty good job based on what his resume is and being part of the staff if they're successful again. Like, I mean, I'll be honest. I think Matt Wells wants to be head coach again. And Utah State, his alma mater where he used to coach, just is coming open right now. So I don't know if that's something he'd want to do, is go back home and where he started and kind of wrap it up, or if he wants to do this for a while. You know, you just never know what motivates a coach. Is it the highest level of competition? Is it being in the right place? Is it being with the right people, which I think he feels like he is? And, oh, yeah, the wife factor. Are they happy where you're at? And do they want to be somewhere else? So I think for the most part, we're going to see Connor Riley and Joe Klanderman be his coordinators for a while. Why? Because he gave them both the shot to move up to this level. Yeah. I was fascinated to hear, you know, I'd done my research on Joe, but hear him describe his climb and how he'd been at Minnesota State and took a job in Kleiman's first year, and 6 years after that, 6 years plus removed from Division II football, he's a Big 12 defensive coordinator. I mean, that's a coach putting a lot of trust and faith in his guys, and guys tend to reward that trust, and they don't just go grab a buck. So I think the staff will be, you know, the bones of it will be intact. And let's be honest too, they've got 3 guys maybe on the staff that are on the tail ends of their career and are pretty damn happy being at Kansas State, where it's a little bit lower pressure, but still playing at a high level with pretty good pay. So there's stability with that too.
It's different because I think for basketball, the age of being a head coach is younger and younger. You know, we see a lot of young head coaches for basketball because there's a lot more programs. And so you're right. Mm-hmm. It's easier for a Urick to go somewhere else and be a head coach. I don't think Van Malone is leaving to go take a job at, you know, a Division II or an FCS school. I don't think that Connor Riley or Joe Klanderman is doing that. Would they leave to go to a Mountain West school? Maybe. But with this age of college football, there's so much uncertainty. You know, in 5 years, that Mountain West school might not even be playing and playing for a chance at the 12-team playoff. And so I don't think we're going to see very much movement amongst, you know, middle-aged assistants. Young assistants, you're going to see that. Brian LePack is going to go try and be an offensive coordinator. That's right. Just the nature of it. You are a position coach, then you are a coordinator, and then you want to be a head coach. That is how this works. But I don't think that the defensive and offensive coordinators are planning on going anywhere anytime soon.
You did bring something up there that struck home with me. I mean, knowing Matt Wells' connection to Utah State, which are very deep, you know, you would think they might come talk to him, but he might also say, I have no interest in coming back and going back down the career ladder. But there's this dude named Van Malone. And
that's true.
So you can see what happens there. I think there could be a chance one of the coaches could move out there if the interim doesn't get it done. So that's just a messy situation out there.
Yeah.
From Call Me T22, how do you feel about the home and away draw for K-State basketball this upcoming season?
I forgot they did that.
I think the home schedule is tough, but fantastic. I mean, you got some programs coming into Manhattan next year, and that'll be fun. And it's going to be just so watered down now, only playing 5 teams in home and aways.
Yeah.
If that's what you mean, is weird. Adding in the fact that Arizona State's one of them. I mean, I know there's going to be random polls. There needs to be. They need to integrate those schools, and you know, who knows? Maybe Arizona State and Kansas State basketball get some heat to it. I liked Cincinnati coming in home and away, and of course the rest are the Big 12 schools. And a little disappointed Colorado wasn't one of them, but everyone can't just get their ideal list of schools. Everyone needs 5 schools, and sometimes it gets weird. Utah is not playing any home and away, I believe, any of the other Pac-12 teams that came in with. I think they have all different schools. Gills, are you looking that up?
Yeah, BYU would be the closest thing.
Right. They don't play the other 3 Pac-12 schools at home and away. I thought that was really odd. But yeah, I thought the conference did a much better job with basketball than they did with football. Football, just some of the stuff they decided to do just didn't make sense.
You guys don't follow the NBA, so I won't go down that rabbit hole. But we keep talking about this, guys. Like, how cool would it be to have an in-season tournament? I mean, I know we have the Big 12 tournament, but what if there was a way to split it up and say, hey, we play 20 conference games, so let's take 2 of those games, right? Split it up, put in pods of 4. Right? How cool would it be to see one of those 4 teams that you don't play home and away with, to where now you get 3, essentially 2 or 3, however they want to do it, neutral site games. And you just say, hey, here's pod 1, pod 2, pod 3, and you rotate it throughout the whole entire, you rotate it throughout the years. Obviously, KU and K-State get the home and away. There are certain protected rivalries. But if they could find a way to just make it one gigantic event, and Fitz, I'm going to say it, in Vegas, and you just split it up into pods, and here's your champion, pod 1 champion, pod 2 champion, pod 3 champion. And then you play a third place game. You just play 2 games over a span of 3 days or whatever. I think it would be really cool. I think it could draw a lot of attention. It would be unique. And, instead of having to play, 1 game down at Arizona, well, maybe you move that to the neutral court, and it takes away from, you each give up 1 home game and 1 away game, but you still have 9 and 9. I think it could be pretty cool.
I would agree with you. I think it's a pretty good idea, Cole. Vegas, somewhere in Texas, maybe Fort Worth in their arena.
Yeah.
Kansas City and or Wichita. Wichita is very central for a lot of these schools, and then maybe Pittsburgh for the East. I think it's kind of a cool idea.
If
That's
you go to
podcast,
Vegas,
we came up with a good idea. We're going to just shut it down.
Fitz, if they do Vegas, you'll be there. Right? Even if K-State's not playing one of those pods.
Oh yeah,
Fitz
if it's like Utah against Houston, and let's see, UCF against Arizona State, I think I need to be there to cover it. I mean, that's a big event.
Right.
And I'm here. I'm here. I'm a supportive of the Big 12. I'll do it as a sacrifice to the conference. You're welcome.
I'll mention that K-State's schedule is pretty favorable in the Big 12. It might be the most. I'd have to go through every team, but it might be the most favorable in the league. I mean, getting KU and Iowa State home and away, that's not necessarily easy. Those teams you got to play twice isn't easy, but Jerome Tang's undefeated against both of those teams at home in his career. He's never lost to KU or Iowa State inside of Bramwich Coliseum. Now, winning on the road against those teams, maybe that's a different story, but you can't just get all the bottom teams at home. The Big 12 is so good. It's deep. It's also top heavy. And so, those teams at the top, you're going to have to play a couple of those home and away. If I got to choose of that kind of tier 1 list of schools, I would pick KU and Iowa State because it's great for fan engagement. It's a rivalry. You're going to get the best out of both teams, but K-State, Jerome Tang's teams are going to be locked in. And so is it ideal to go out and play Baylor on the road? No, but you only get them once, right? Houston and Arizona only once, but it's at home. I think you can take that, right? And I love how you have, UCF on the road, Utah on the road. I think that K-State, home or away, can win those games, right? Get them on the road. Go out and steal a road victory. Save that home-only matchup for a team like West Virginia that, is maybe a 50-50 game. That Bramwich Coliseum atmosphere can kind of get you over the hump to win some of those games. So I think it's very favorable for Kansas State. It's awesome that the Wildcats don't play Arizona twice, Arizona, Houston, and Baylor, right? I mean, those are kind of the bona fide tier 1 in the Big 12 next season. And so, teams like West Virginia, Texas Tech, getting those teams at home only once and having UCF away, like it all kind of added up nicely for K-State.
Did they dodge Houston altogether?
No, they got Houston coming to Manhattan.
Houston at home. That would be fun because, I'm wondering if that's how the Big 12 is going to do it. So next year, will K-State go on the road to Houston and then –
I think that's what the plan is. It's the Matrix. Yeah. They'll just keep it like this for a while, which is the appropriate way to do it. And I think if you roll through it for 4 years and at the end of 4 years, you say, well, K-State, Arizona State, that never caught on. And this never caught on. Let's shuffle these teams. And so I can see that happening in a 4-year span. We'll see. I like the home schedule. It's going to be great for fans.
I was kind of sad RJ Jones doesn't get a return trip to Manhattan. TCU is only an away game for K-State.
Yeah, well, he'll learn to appreciate the crowds he had in Manhattan.
Yeah, no kidding.
Last question of the pod from Don't Touch My Willie.
I wouldn't
Welcome.
do
I don't
that.
know if we've had that one.
Gales, don't say that on this podcast. I would never touch your Willie.
I don't know.
Good thing you're not
Anyway.
sharing a room together.
We're going to Vegas next week, everybody. So we'll see if that changes after that.
I'm not staying with either one of these guys. No way.
Cole, make sure we there's deadbolts on the doors in Vegas, right? We got to make sure we take extra security measures in our room.
I wonder if the Bellagio has connecting rooms so I can come over and bug you guys.
I hope not. Last question of our podcast is from Don't Touch My Willie. This is in the way too early category, but Tang's contract makes it clear how critical Gene Taylor is to the program, and we know how close Kleiman and Taylor are. But there will come a time when Taylor leaves. Pretty sure he is the elder of the three. How does the hiring of a new AD work? Will Linton have primary input? Ice, I have huge trust in Taylor, less in his superiors.
Yeah, I mean that's a university choice. With there's an athletic council to put in input, but we saw Kirk Schultz go get John Curry to be the useful idiot for him in dismantling the horribleness of K-State athletics, whatever that was about. That was such a strange era of time. So yeah, they can have a big impact. Now, if I know Gene Taylor, when it starts getting close, he's going to make it very clear that Joel Shields or Kenny Lanou or someone should be the next person. And maybe, there's someone else. But he'll make it clear, because this will be like a coach retiring. It's not like you fired the guy and now we need to reinvent the system. If you're a smart leader, you want to keep the system in place. If it's working and the people under him have learned how to do this, I think you stay the course. If it's Kenny Lanou, this will be the weirdest full circle moment for me if Kenny's the next AD, because I met Kenny when he was a student intern for Baylor at the Big 12, Big 8 tournament. I don't even know what it was. Big 12 probably tournament. Yeah, it's Big 12, obviously. Yeah, so I mean, I met him when he was in college, and now I've watched him ramp up his career and take steps, and now he's one of the top 3 guys in the department. It's kind of amazing.
I would say too, Fitz, there's a guy who we did Fighting Never Fighting with by the name of Blair DeBoard, who's the associate athletic director at Mizzou right now, Manhattan native, K-State baseball player. It just depends on when Gene decides to hang him up, hang up his proverbial clipboard and whatever he uses in his office. He doesn't use a clipboard. Okay.
He doesn't use a clipboard.
I don't know his computer. Can you hang up a
dry
computer?
erase board?
Yeah, he's got a chalkboard. That's all.
Chalkboard. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that whoever is the next athletic director is going to be a K-Stater. We'll just put it that way. I feel very confident about that. And they are going to make sure that they are going to keep their coaches. I know that's what this question was about. Yeah, I think that whenever Gene decides to retire, they're going to make sure that priority number 1 is keeping the coaches as long as they want to be there, right? Like you're going to have to ask your coaches, hey, this is the boss we're looking at? Can you work with this person? If the answer to that question is no, then I really don't believe that that person is right for the job. But if the answer to that question is yes, then you can proceed. But you have to find a way to make sure that you keep your football coach and your basketball coach especially happy after all of the things that have gone on really the past 365 days.
Yeah, exactly. Things are working. Don't try to break it. I think that's the lesson of the last year. So is that it, boys? You done talking? We're done talking. The dogs are asleep.
Next edition of the Powercat Questions podcast is going to be
from Vegas.
From Vegas.
That's it for this edition. We're not in Vegas. We will be soon.
This has been a GoPowercat.com and Spirit Street production. Please support this show by subscribing to this YouTube channel or follow us on your favorite podcast platform.